Running and your diet are so closely connected, it could be the difference between breakthrough performance or the wall. And we're always learning new stuff about that relationship, and some of it's not easy to hear, but here it is.
One hard truth that took me a while to realise is that thinner doesn't necessarily mean faster. This is a really personal one to talk about as someone who suffered from an eating disorder in the past, but I think it's really important. There is a tendency for a lot of people to think that if they were lighter, they're going to be faster, but it really depends on your starting point. And if you're already at a strong, ideal race weight, then losing weight could actually have the opposite effect. Let's take me as an example. When I was at my lightest, I actually couldn't run 5K because my body simply wasn't nourished and strong enough to do it. So for me, actually getting to a healthy weight, a stronger weight, and having a stronger body has helped me to achieve things that I actually never even thought would have been possible. At that point, at my lightest, I basically had red S. I didn't have a period for 5 years, and a bone scan revealed a lot of potential problems and risk of osteoporosis, so I was not in a good place.
I think it's important at this point actually to just interject to say that there are a lot of runners out there that push into that red S kind of zone and end up with stress fractures or injuries, and it's not a negative thing. Everybody's diet, everybody's nutrition is a learning journey, but it is encouraging to see that people are sharing that kind of journey to try and help us to know that it is perfectly not normal, but it is something that happens.
And then for me, if I fast forward on my journey to Chicago, I actually made the decision to really address my fueling for the marathon, and I increased my carb intake and my fuel intake. And as a result, with the right fueling on board and thinking about my body as an instrument, not an ornament, and giving it the fuel it needs to run a marathon, I ran a 10-minute PB and a stronger marathon than I ever would have dreamed of when I was way lighter.
There seems to be this school of thought that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, as in anything that goes in your mouth, your body just sees it as a calorie, so it doesn't really matter. And that doesn't make sense. I mean, a calorie is a calorie from a thermodynamic standpoint, as in what the scientific calculation is, but how your body views a calorie, that's a different story, and it's something that runners have to wrap their heads around like pretty quickly. And what do I mean by that? Well, look at it this way. I could eat a really balanced diet throughout the day, give me 2,500 kilocalories, which is kind of like the recommended daily amount for me. Or I could just eat 2,500 kilocalories worth of Haribo in a 1 hour sitting. Is my body gonna look at them the same? I look at it like this. We all imagine yourself to have like this engine that runs 24/7 in the background in you, and it uses fuel to do things like keep your heart beating, keep your brain working, keep all your vital organs functioning in the proper way. Like, that's a non-negotiable. That just happens underneath everything else. And that's the basal metabolic rate, as in the amount of calories needed to like literally live. But then on top of that, we need energy for things like existing outside of just living, as in moving, working, exercising. Now that's a separate engine. I mean, just look at it this way, we have twin engines. So what you put in the body to fuel those engines is obviously going to be really, really important. In our day-to-day life, what we want is we want a nice, even release of energy throughout the day, because something happens when we put lots of energy in at once. And I'm going to show you by eating a biscuit. Now, with sugary food or simple carbohydrates like sweets or cake or even white bread, hang on, I'm going to stand here because I'm going to show you a graph. This cookie is going to do something like the equivalent of this. Simple carbs are broken down quicker, so the energy hits the bloodstream quicker, so the insulin response to control that blood glucose is bigger. And what does insulin do with the excess blood glucose that it doesn't need there and then? It stores it, and a lot of the time as fat. Oh my God, that's so nice. But compare that to something like pasta. I am not going to eat this pasta raw, but I am going to put this chart here. This is kind of what happens to the release of energy when you eat pasta. It's longer term, it's over the longer term. So the body doesn't need to react by releasing a lot of insulin and then storing the energy it doesn't need. It can just go about its daily business for the most part and just use the energy that's coming in from the food. It's like a quid pro quo relationship. And obviously there is a point in your day where you might need a carbohydrate drink or a gel. When you're exercising, when the body needs to put back in and respond quickly to the energy demands. So that a time and a place, of course, we're not saying don't ever eat sugary stuff, because when we're exercising, we might need it. But in your general day-to-day life, protein, good fats, complex carbs, they do two things. They increase the feeling of fullness so that you don't snack, and they cause that gradual release of energy so the blood sugar doesn't spike, and then insulin isn't released as much, and then the excess isn't stored as fat. So no, a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. It's not about just burning off what we eat. It's about eating the right things so that we burn it off at the right times in the right ways.
I'd say a hard truth that applies to probably 75% of you out there, including myself, is that there is no such thing as gels that cause upset to the stomach, and you can't take gels while you're running. It is all about gut training, but then there's the caveat that 25% of people, maybe that is actually the case. See, I'm very fortunate to have been able to take most gels on with very little gut problems, but on the odd occasion I've tried a new gel and I have had any kind of intestinal distress, needing to go to the loo or whatever. I've remembered the gut is as trainable as the legs. You just need to give it time. So what you can't do is go out for a session, try a new gel, it upsets your stomach and you rule it out. And here's why. The reason I say you've got to give any gel a chance is because if you're taking that gel and either you like the way it tastes or how easy it is to take down, or the effect that it makes you feel, you know, if you're running and you can feel the hit of that gel, if it upsets your stomach, don't rule it out, because the gut's trainable, same as the legs. So if you like something, just persevere with it. We heard this crazy story when we were doing the UTMB 100K of the guy that won it. He used to get to each aid station, every single aid station, and bang 6 gels on the bounce, just go like 1, 2, and he'd obviously trained his body to accept that amount, that flavor, that everything, and it obviously worked for him because he ran, I won't even tell you how much quicker he ran over the 100 kilometers than me, but it was fairly ludicrous. So for all of you out there that say that you can't take gels or certain gels disagree with you, I'd say that's probably true for 20% of us, and I'd say the rest just haven't given it a fair crack and need to persevere and take those losses in training rather than the races, if you know what I mean.
Fasted runs are a complicated concept because you do by choice or by necessity. With busy lives, sometimes the only option is to wake up before the day begins and get out for a run, and we understand that. And if that's the case, let's explore the latest thinking on the concept, because if you choose to run fasted, you're going to need to know it too. The idea behind running fasted has always been to train your body to switch on to using fats and not carbohydrates as your energy source. The previous thinking being that when you then race, your body would be better at using fats and preserve carbs for longer when you need them. So does fasted running train the body to use fats? Yes. Does it translate to better race performances? No. So now we're at a crossroads. A decision you have to make for yourself. Do you even care about a race performance, for one? Not everyone does, but if you do, these general guidelines will help. If you do fasted runs, make them your easy ones, not a punchy session. You would need carb fuel for that. Don't make them longer than an hour, and 1 to 2 runs per week fasted is the sweet spot. Even a banana or a small yogurt or something on other runs can help with the fueling in early mornings. Before our 5 AM long run, we have a small bowl of oats, yogurt and banana so that it's kind on the stomach, but we can still run about 50 minutes later. Ultimately, you want to make your own decisions for what's best for your life, but these are the reasons and the recommendations.
In this cup, there are contents that probably, I may be making this up, I don't know, but probably if discovered today might even be illegal, and might not be, but what I do know is that caffeine, as in the ingredient in coffee that makes us go whoa, is an unbelievable performance enhancer if done right, as in it's a no-brainer and also delicious. And as the caffeine is now hitting, it's time for me to jump on the treadmill and get my session done. And I'm going to talk through, while I'm running, the benefits of caffeine, but also there are some I suppose, what you would call guidelines in how you take it, how much, when, stuff like that, that we've found just in terms of our own performances, but also the scientific data kind of provides this window, this area of opportunity. So because you can overshoot it, just ask Mary. Right, while I'm lining it up, let's just start with why would you even do caffeine in the first place? 2 reasons really. It improves mental clarity, which is something I think we'd probably all agree, especially on long distance races like a marathon you could do with, come towards the end. And it reduces your perception of fatigue, so how tired you feel. Not how tired you actually are, it kind of masks it, but it's how tired you feel. So usually when I take a gel mid-race, boom, I'm like, whoa, seeing things in colour again, feel good. And that's why I do it. But as I say, there are certain things that you have to do in order to get like the full effect. So as basically as I can break it down, because I'm still trying to understand the nuances of caffeine, it is that a minimum dosage of around 2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is an effective dosage. So if you weigh 50 kilograms, and let's say 1 cup of filter coffee is in the region of 100 milligrams, then that's the minimum you need. So a cup of coffee on race morning about an hour before the race, bingo bango, that's the minimum. You could obviously have a 2-shot, 3-shot, quad shot. I mean, yeah, careful now. So you probably want to know what that looks like practically, and I can only say from our perspective, but it's very much when we have a race morning, coffee, obviously, but how much? Well, let's take a Starbucks Grande latte for an example. I think it's about 180 milligrams of caffeine. So straight away for me, we're getting near that 3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight because I'm 63 kilograms. I might then on top of it have a caffeine drink from Bix where I'm adding another 40-50 milligrams, but that's it. So I don't overdo it. So we're already pretty sensitive to caffeine because we only have 1 caffeinated drink per day. So when we take extra caffeine, for example, on a race morning, it hits harder. And we like it that way. I had to wean myself down from like 5 or 6 cups a day. It was not healthy. But now, because of my sensitivity levels, caffeine hits hard. And then during the race at about 2 hours, I'll probably take a Morton or a Bix caffeinated gel, and they provide somewhere in the region of 75 to 100 milligrams of caffeine in that dose. So it's the low end, but honestly, I can tell you I respond very highly given that the caffeine that I had before was about 3 hours before. And after exercise, you may or you may not have heard of this thing that they call the golden window. This mythical time after exercise where if you put food in, it's better for you, it absorbs more. To an extent that is the case, but I would say it's more than a golden window, it's more like a golden doorway or maybe even bigger. So we're gone half an hour after I just exercised. I just stretched, took my time, had a quick drink. I have some rice here that we've cooked. We have some egg there, and I'm going to explain to you exactly why the window is wider than we think it is. We are such creatures of habit, by the way. I'm just eating carbohydrates and protein. That's it. That's the way I roll at lunchtime. Now the current thinking is that whilst, yeah, there is a certain element of eat relatively soon after you've exercised, that's kind of standard. I think the body is wanting to put fuel back in so it absorbs more when it goes in. But this 30-minute window after exercise is a bit of a fallacy if your diet is pretty generally good throughout the day. That's the point. So as long as you eat a healthy, balanced diet of carbohydrates, good fats, proteins, the veggies, all of that, then putting it in an emergency after 30 minutes, it's not as necessary. Put it in, of course, and you know, a reasonable time after exercise, but there's no like big rush. You can chill. I'm now probably 45 minutes removed from my exercise, absolutely fine with this. And you might think that this meal is a little bit basic, and it is. I'm drinking water as well, but we're trying to maintain this this healthy lifestyle. We're trying to reduce the amount of processed foods. Even like we have like a reward, what do you call it? We have like a cheat day once a week that we're trying to kind of steer away from as well. Just trying to put the right things in at the right time consistently, so we don't have to react and have that special window to eat after exercise, or anyway be reactive about food. Just like good crushing sometimes, but consistency. And it's the same with our running, right? Consistency wins.
Now this is a two-pronged hard truth, because it's about carb loading. That deserves an entire video to itself, to be honest with you, but I want to give you 2 points about carb loading as I see it. And the first thing is, it's an absolute necessity when it comes to getting the best out of yourself, particularly for endurance events like a marathon. You're not going to reach your absolute potential if you don't also fuel your body in the right ways before and during the race. You can get away with running marathons without carbohydrates if you're happy to just finish, but if you really want to get a particular time or have a particularly good experience, carb loading is a must. It's how you do it, the thinking has changed. It used to be that in the weeks lead up to a race, to get your body ready for when you put the carbs in, you actually deplete your carb stores. So let's say 1 week before a race, you just stop eating carbohydrates near enough altogether from 7 days out to about 3 days out, and then you load. You put carbohydrates in, and the thinking was, oh, the body will store more of it, that's all good. It's not actually the case. That's been debunked since. As long as you're eating a pretty healthy and balanced diet and nothing too heavy in the lead up, then we get to 3 days out. And there's 2 ways to approach carb load. Just going to give you the really quick 2 ways. First way is a 3-day carb load, where you try to put in 8 grams per kilogram of your body weight per day over the 3 days. I'll put the calculations here. And the other way is a 2-day carb load, which is 10 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight per day. That's more aggressive. It's a lot of carbohydrates. I tried it in Chicago, and although I managed it, it was only just. That's a lot. For me, as a 63 kilogram person, you're looking at nearly 700 grams of carbohydrates. And if you think a bagel is about 50 grams, then you start to realize how much you've got to put in. And if you're not a fan of carbs, or you're not particularly bothered about seeing how fast you can run a certain distance, then it probably doesn't matter as much. Each to their own. You don't have to carb load. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're looking at the top end, something to think about. And if this video brought you value, then consider subscribing to the channel so we can add some more value to you. But I do know you're going to like this video, where we talk about the endurance diet, which is the 5 top habits of endurance runners worldwide. And I speak to world famous author and diet expert Matt Fitzgerald, which was like a pinch me moment for me as well. So I think you're really going to get a lot of value out of this video. Thanks for watching. See you next week.